Hi everyone. I have here a printed copy of an article called The 15 Core Tenets of Orthodox Atheism, found on creationtoday.org. I figured it was time for me to do some apologist bashing. I could have sworn that TMM responded to this, because I know I have seen someone respond to this article, and I could have sworn it was TMM. But I even asked him about it, and he says no. Not that he can recall anyway, and I can't find the video, so whatever. It's by a guy called Brian Melugin. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. It's on creationtoday.org, like I said. He was interviewed by Eric Hovind about this. And that video, someone responded to that video, and I was sure it was TMM. But anyway, the article's been sitting on my hard drive ever since, because I figured it was so stupid I wanted to respond to it. We begin with something absolutely beautiful. Atheist, from the Latin for no gods. Okay, who can tell me what's wrong with that? Atheist is derived from atheos, without gods, or without a god, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, atheos is Greek, not Latin. He also claims that agnostic is Latin. No, it's also Greek. Agnosis, without knowledge. That's Greek. Since this is a simple Google search away, I have to assume that anyone who can use the internet well enough to find this article already knows more about the subject than this guy does. Now he claims, and this is important, we're going to come back to this later on, the wording here is important. An atheist is an individual who chooses to affirm the statement, "there are no gods," as true. This needs to be distinguished from agnostic, blah blah blah. So he's using the strong definition of atheism. That's okay when it comes to his God, the God of a literal interpretation of the Bible. I assume anyway, because he's on Creation Today. With respect to that definition of God, according to which there can only be one God, Yahweh, I am, in fact, a strong atheist, because I know that Yahweh doesn't exist as described in the Bible. He's logically incoherent and incompatible with observable reality. And, well, according to that definition of gods, there are no other gods. So, yes, by that definition of God, I am a strong atheist. It's also dishonest to respond to an article like this by attacking the definition. But there is a problem with this definition, which we will get to. The following list is the series of beliefs which a consistent atheist must hold. Of course, they can choose to reject any of them, but that makes them a heretic, I suppose, or maybe a hypocrite. But we can discuss that some other time. Yes, please save that for another time, because it's ridiculous. The point is that these tenets logically flow from one to the other. So that's the thing. That's what he's trying to do here. He starts with 1, there is no God or gods. Okay, fair enough. Strong atheism, yeah, sure. But then he claims that the rest follow logically. So that's why a consistent atheist must believe all of them. So let's see if they do. Start your betting, people. 1, there is no God. 2, there's nothing supernatural. There is no supernatural, including spirits or afterlife. No argument could be made against God. This is why he thinks this follows. No argument could be made against gods, which would still allow for the supernatural. Problem of evil. Paradox of the stone. Do you need more? The problem of divine hiddenness. Okay, for those of you who may not be aware of these problems, the problem of evil is, originally stated, if God is perfectly good and can do everything, why doesn't he eliminate evil? I mean, if he's good, he would, and if he can do it, he would. So either he doesn't have the ability or he doesn't have the inclination, which would make him evil. But God is defined as having both traits, so contradiction, God does not exist. You can replace evil with suffering if you prefer. That tends to make it better because it kills the but free will defense. There's also a version that is specific to Yahweh, who is omnipresent and cannot coexist with sin. Sinners can't go to heaven because sin cannot coexist with God. But God is omnipresent. So God can coexist with sin on earth. Right? So what's... He can't have both traits, but he is defined as having both traits. So he doesn't exist. His existence implies a contradiction. What else did I say? The paradox of the stone is a problem that comes up with omnipotence, and we can go on a long rant about this. I'm just going to do the quick one, which can be objected to, but those objections can then be shot down and whatever. Quick version is, can God make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? He's omnipotent, so he must be, but then he can't lift it, so he's not omnipotent, which he must be. So omnipotence in itself is logically incoherent. And then, I know, redefinition, blah, 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 but the point is this argument can be made against God, in fact, a specific God, a God who is omnipotent. But it doesn't say anything about anything else that's supernatural. That's the point. Problem of divine hiddenness is, how can there be atheists if God wants people to believe in him? He's omnipotent. He wants me to believe in him, so he must have revealed himself to me in a way that makes me convinced. But I'm not convinced. In fact, I'm convinced that he doesn't exist. Therefore, he doesn't exist. There could be no strong atheist if God existed. To which, of course, theists will respond, yes, but Marty, you're lying. And my only response to that is, you're an asshole, and no. So the point is, he's completely wrong. It does not follow from the non-existence of gods, especially his God, which is very narrowly defined, that there is nothing supernatural. However, what he's getting at here is he has reversed an implication. Metaphysical naturalism implies strong atheism, because if there is nothing supernatural, then there are no gods. But you can't say the same in reverse. It could be that gods don't exist, but magic does. Philosophically speaking, that would be possible. But you can't have no magic and still have gods, because gods can use magic. Moving on. 2 is wrong, and we're already done. 3. Thus there is only materialism. All that exists is the physical universe of time, space, matter, and energy. I would like to add something here. When I say that there's nothing supernatural, I mean within the context of physical reality, the reality that I can observe and interact with. Nature, hence supernatural. So by definition, the supernatural does not exist within nature. But I'm making no claims about beyond nature. I mean, I know that the supernatural, even gods, exist outside of nature, in fiction, for example. I play D&D every now and then. I don't have time anymore, but I used to play it quite a lot, and there are gods in D&D. And there's magic in D&D. There's definitely supernatural stuff there. So yes, outside of nature, sure, outside of the reality that I live in, sure. But you see, I'm not a metaphysical naturalist. I am a methodological naturalist. I only make claims about the reality in which I actually live, the reality that I have access to. So I am not going to say there is only materialism. This does not follow from the lack of belief in gods, or the lack of belief in the supernatural in this reality. I'm not going to make claims about other possible realities. I mean, I already know of realities where, fictional realities, where this doesn't apply. So how arrogant would it be of me to assert that our reality is the only reality when I know of other realities? Granted, they are a special type of realities that we have made up, but I can still relate to the idea of other realities. And I'm not going to make claims about any other realities that really exist, except really doesn't make sense there, because what really exists, as far as I can see, is what exists in reality. And by reality, I mean this reality. Language gets a bit messy when we're talking about other realities. But I'm not going to make any claims about that. Anyway, 4. Thus, there are no miracles or magic within physical reality. Correct. And this does follow from from 3 and 2. So yeah, wow, you're actually correct. As long as we restrict ourselves to within this reality. But then 3 is very explicit about the non-existence of such other realities where magic could exist. So I'm guessing you're not. So no, I'm not even going to give you a point for this one. Sorry. Does not follow logically. It follows logically if we add the modifier within physical reality, but not otherwise. 5. Everything is predetermined, yielding determinism. Okay, where the hell did that come from? I agree, but it doesn't follow. This has nothing to do with atheism. And by the way, everything would be predetermined even if a God existed. Because people make decisions for reasons. The idea of free will is nonsensical. If I offer you a choice between a gourmet meal and dog shit, you're gonna choose the gourmet meal every time, unless you wanted to show me. That's a reason. So you make decisions for reasons. And those reasons come from what came before, and so on back, all the way back. So determinism, I feel, is... people talk about compatibilism. Well, that has to do with... Compatibilism fits inside this, because we do have will. But it's not as free as we like to think it is. So I'm a determinist, yes. And I would be even if I believed in God. Because I don't see how that's relevant to the subject. 6. There is no basis for any objective non-physical value. Correct, but does not follow. And the reason why I accept this has nothing to do with whether I believe in a God or not. In fact, there would be no objective value even if God existed and declared, this is the value of this. This is how much a human life is worth. God would be an agent declaring that he has assigned a value to something. There is a valuer doing the valuing. Thanks for that one, Anti-Citizen X. I really like that one. And if there is a valuer doing the valuing, then the value that is assigned is the one assigned by that agent, thus making it necessarily subjective. Objective value does not exist. It is a nonsensical concept. 7. Thus there is no free will. Does not follow from 6. Follows from 5 though, so fine. The point is that you cannot choose anything by free will, and that is going to be important later on. Because choices are not really your choices. Remember his definition of atheist? An atheist is an individual who chooses to affirm the statement, there are no gods. Can you see where this is going now? We have concluded that he thinks we have concluded that atheists do not believe that we make choices. Of course we do, it's just that what we mean by making a choice is not what he thinks it means. But the point is, I do not control the processes that lead to me making a certain choice. And the same would be true even if those processes had a magical, supernatural component to them. The processes would still be controlling me. Thus, there can be no objective right or wrong. Yeah, I thought we already covered this. There is no objective value. And adding a God doesn't change that. He says, additionally, with no transcendent moral lawgiver, there can be no objective moral law by which to distinguish between right and wrong, even if we could choose. I don't choose to recognize things as right or wrong. I just do. It's not a choice. To have a moral objection to something that happens. I don't sit there and go, should I choose to object to this? When someone's being beaten to death in front of me, should I be offended by what I am seeing? Should I object to it? I wonder if I should. That doesn't happen. It's a gut reaction. But indeed, there is no objective moral law, and there wouldn't be even if there were a God who said, this is the moral law, thou shalt obey, because that would be his subjective idea of what is morality, and it would not be mine. It would not be yours, probably. I mean, there are probably things in the Bible that you think are not moral. If I take, I'm assuming you're anti-choice. So the parts in the Bible where God says, rip open the bellies of pregnant women and throw their fetuses into the fire, you would object to. And the part about how if your wife has cheated on you, if you suspect that your wife has cheated on you, you should give her this potion that causes her to have a miscarriage. You should object to that as being morally wrong. So you don't even, I assume, agree with God's idea of what is objective moral law. You don't have to, because it's not objective. It's subjective. Even if God existed, it would be God's subjective morality that he is trying to impose on others. And even if he can punish people for disagreeing, that still doesn't make it objective. There is no justification for condemning any action as wrong or celebrating any as right. Murder is merely the interruption of various chemical processes which we categorize as life. The victim's desire to continue living is not based on a free choice. Why would it have to be? But is predetermined by natural law, just as his hair color or height. The same can be said for any act of justice, mercy, charity, love, blah, blah, blah. These words are essentially meaningless and only reflect the present emotional state of the speaker, not some fact about the real universe. Actually, the emotional state of the speaker is an objective fact about the universe, just a very small part of it. Thus, there is no justification for civil law. We can no more blame a murderer for killing than we can blame a magnet for hanging on the refrigerator door. Punishing crime is like punishing leaves for being the wrong color. Sort of. Not quite, but, well, no, pretty much. Yeah, you're right. But here's the thing. What you're saying here is that if there is no objective right or wrong, there can't be any subjective right or wrong either. And yes, there can. There can still be acts that are detrimental or beneficial to a certain cause. So if we want that cause, we ought to act in ways that benefit that cause. Otherwise, we won't get what we want. If we want to live together in peace, and, well, I do, then we ought not kill each other. Seems like a rule that makes sense. There might be situations where killing is necessary in order to preserve peace You're American, right? You know what that's all about. How many times haven't you gone to war for the sake of peace, right? You know what I mean. But the point is, those are still subjective reasons why several of us would get together and decide on a course of action or make decisions about rules that we are supposed to follow. And if you think, oh, that doesn't count because we're not making that choice, no, we are programmed to want to live. So we will take actions that help us do that. And this is how we justify civil law. None of us want to be killed, so let's agree not to kill each other. And let's also agree that if someone is breaking this rule, then we remove that person from society to protect the rest of us. Now you can say that it's wrong to blame the murderer. because he didn't choose to be a murderer. Well, no, but that's not what it's about. If he is just a meat machine running meat code that is causing him to murder other meat machines, and those meat machines are programmed to want to live, then it makes sense for them to remove that harmful meat code from their immediate surrounding. That's why we lock people up, or if we want to be less civilized, we can make an exception to the rule and kill the person who is killing others, because it benefits society as a whole. I find it far more civilized to just lock them up for life and give them a decent life in prison. But whatever, that's a separate discussion. 10. Life has no particular value. Okay, we can stop reading that there, because life has value to me. I'm sure it has value to you. I'm sure it has value to most people. What you're saying is that it has no objective value. And again, objective value does not exist. But how does this follow from the previous one? I don't see a chain of logic here. I just don't. How do you get from there is no, what was the last one? There's no justification for condemning any action. Therefore, life has no particular value. I don't see that that follows. And I don't see how there is no objective right or wrong follows from there is no free will. I don't see a chain of logic here. 11. The self is an illusion. Where the hell did that come from? Throughout a lifetime, a human cells are constantly replaced so that the entire collection of cells may be replaced several times. Yeah, so it's a different... The person who dies might not have a single original part left in his body. I get what you're saying. The self is not so much an illusion as it is an emergent thing. The self is the arrangement. And we can replace pieces of the arrangement as long as the entire arrangement is not interrupted in one go. Again, I don't see how it follows. 2. The perception of a unified self is false. Isn't that the same as 11? The brain is composed of many parts which work both dependently and independently. The part which says of itself, well, the brain is not... Do I even need to respond to this? The brain has many different parts of it that unify into a sense of self. So this is the idea that the self is an illusion. I think it's the same as 11. I don't see how it's relevant. And I don't see how that has anything to do with the existence of a God either. 13. There's no basis for reason or logical thought. How does that follow from the self not being what you think it is? If the brain is matter determined by natural laws, then we cannot choose to accept as true or reject as false any information which it processes. That's not how logic works. We don't find a statement and choose whether to accept it as true or not. We either do or we don't. I do not choose to accept this paper is white as true. I see it, I draw conclusions, there is no choice involved. I could not choose to believe that this paper were black. I could only pretend to choose that. I could have faith in it, which is, of course, pretending to believe something until you delude yourself into perhaps thinking that it's true, or you just start lying about it in order to make money. Hi, apologist. So this is irrelevant. 13b, evolution can only create brains which are programmed to result in survival of the individual, not determining truth from falsity. And actually that is useful for survival-related reasons. For example, if I'm standing on a tall building, being able to determine that the statement "I can fly" is false has survival benefits. Also, you're linking evolution to atheism. These are things that supposedly follow from atheism. But evolution does not follow from atheism. There are atheists who don't accept evolution. For example, Raelians. They believe that humans were created by aliens or brought to Earth by aliens or something like that. They explicitly do not worship these aliens as gods. They don't believe in any gods. They are atheists, and they do not believe in evolution. Also, it was perfectly possible to be an atheist even before Darwin. It's just that you didn't have an explanation for where life came from, how it evolved, how it came to be what it is today, I should say. But you could still not believe in gods. We cannot know anything. We can merely have particular arrangements of brain states, which we call knowledge or beliefs of certain propositions. To that I respond by saying it's not raining, there's just water falling from the clouds. You're objecting to a label. Because I can explain X in a certain way, you don't think that X is an appropriate label for it anymore. That's nuts. The label atom did not stop being useful because we discovered that the atom had smaller components in it. We just had to realize that we were wrong about what atoms were. Same thing here. You are wrong about what knowledge is. It's not some kind of magical thing. It's brain states. So what? The label still applies. Finally, atheists don't exist. Humans are merely a constantly changing collection of matter, just as any other object in the universe. Their unified self is an illusion, and they cannot choose to believe atheism or to reject theism. Remember, you had to choose to affirm the statement as true. One is an atheist not because one has discovered it is true or even because he has chosen to believe it, but because the natural laws have all caused his brain to be arranged in the manner which we call atheism. Yes, by discovering that it is true. Just as his DNA has determined his hair color and height. Well, it's the same thing here. It's not raining. There's just water falling from the clouds. You're objecting to a label. Self is an illusion, free will is an illusion, personhood is an illusion, such a belief or knowledge is merely a predetermined chemical brain state which is not a result of logical thought, which the human brain cannot arguably be capable of doing. Yours clearly can't. And since we began by defining atheist as an individual who chooses to affirm the statement there are no gods as true, then we must now conclude that atheists don't exist. Well, I'm wondering what atheist has chosen to believe that there are no gods. Because if you define atheist in a way that doesn't apply to anyone who adopts the label, then that would be one hell of a straw man. Fellow atheists, did you choose one day to just go, you know what, I'm going to exercise my free will and choose to believe that God doesn't exist? Or if you want to use the more common definition, I'm going to choose to no longer believe in a God. Just a choice, just spur of the moment kind of thing. I'm going to make this choice for no good reason at all. Is that how you became an atheist? I don't think anyone is going to say yes. So yeah, if we're going by this definition, then you're right, atheists don't exist, and you are arguing against a straw man. Is anyone shocked? I'm not. So it seems that I've just reasoned my way to the proposition, if atheism is true, atheists do not exist. Very sincerely, I did not actually expect this when I started. I have not been arguing to this conclusion. You've been arguing to it by misrepresenting atheism and by jumping from one nonsense claim to the next, claiming it follows logically even though it doesn't. I've just been following the logic where it led. You could not follow logic if you were tied to it. When you define atheist to mean atheist, instead of defining it to mean agnostic, as the kids tend to do online these days, so you knew that, and you still chose a different definition. How honest of you. Then I think you ought to understand why I don't believe that atheists exist. As you have defined them, I agree, they don't. But again, you have defined them in a way that no atheist would agree with. Ironically, if they did exist, they should agree with me that they do not exist. Well, look, all I can say in response to that is, I am convinced that your God does not exist. For any definition of God that has ever been proposed to me, I feel that well, some of them are not appropriate uses of the word God. For example, the pharaohs of Egypt. I don't consider them gods. They are real people who are deified. Elvis is worshipped as a god. There is a church of Elvis. Okay, I don't consider Elvis a god. I think that in order to even apply for godhood, as a concept can only apply to be a concept representing godhood if the being that is conceptualized is supernatural and in control of some aspect of nature, at least some aspect of nature. So you can have the Thor, the god of lightning, thunder, what have you. Odin, the god of wisdom. Yahweh, the god of everything. D&D does this. Gods have portfolios. You must be a god of something. That's why you're a god instead of just a very powerful, immortal being. But for any definition of God which meets that requirement, that it is a supernatural being that is in control of at least some aspect of nature, all I can say is I do not believe in any such being. Some of them I can say I am confident do not exist. Some of them I cannot comprehend, which would make me an atheist with respect to those. Some of them are unknowable whether they exist or not. That would make me a hard agnostic. Some of them are completely irrelevant. That would make me an atheist. I don't care. But for no such definition can I say, yes, this is something I believe, and that is the colloquial definition of atheism. Someone who does not believe in any God. I am an atheist. So, I am an atheist. If atheists don't exist according to your reasoning, then clearly your reasoning is flawed. See ya.